Ready to go. That's on LTC. Yeah. That's on. It's good music. Loud.
Okay, Mike's on. Terrific, look at that. Okay. Well, no, I'll send it over. Okay, this is a meeting of the School Improvement and Performance Management Subcommittee. If we could have a roll call, please.
Chairperson Bahu?
Here.
Ms. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Lay? Three present.
We're going to start this meeting. This meeting is in reference to chronic absenteeism for students in grades 1 through 8, and how the school administration progresses the students throughout the grade, moving them forward, supports them if they do have chronic absenteeism, and what the general practice is in order to help them succeed in their grade level and moving forward. So I guess I'd like to turn this meeting over to Ms. Crocker-Robage, simply so that she could share with us what the school administration does.
May I, before?
Of course.
Just want to add, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just go to the basic. What is the definition of chronic absence? So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lay and Mr. Bahu. The definition of chronic absenteeism is when a student is missing 10% or more of the school year. So in a given school year with 180 days, if you miss 18 days or more of an entire school year, you are considered chronically absent. Throughout the school year, we keep track of how many days we're in and what percentage of those days have already passed. So for example, 1 quarter goes by, that's 45 days of the school year. So if a student has missed 5 days at the 45-day mark, you are considered chronically absent at that point. And so we keep that running measure all year long. And so the number of days of school correspond to the percent of absences that are considered chronically absent, all the way until 18 by the end of the school year. Yes.
How about the absence with the doctor's note? Would that be considered?
So in this, at the Department of Education level, they do not distinguish an excused absence from an unexcused absence in our chronic absenteeism rate. In our district, we have a reporting system that records if a student brings a medical documentation or has the appropriate documentation for a court appearance or a bereavement day, etc., and we would excuse that absence according to our policy. But the Department of Education makes no distinction between what districts consider excused and unexcused. Those policies do vary district by district, so it's understandable, and we know that it's due to the fact that missing that much school, and I think we talked about this on the floor before, equates to a significant impact overall on a child's ability to learn. So whether it is an excused or an unexcused reason, the end result tends to be the same. It has a detrimental impact. Missing that much school for any reason has a detrimental impact on a child's performance.
I just want to follow up on that. So these numbers that you're giving us, these percentages, is that including the excused absences? Okay.
So that includes all of them. So this is, what you have before you tonight is a reporting of the 2023-24 school year, 24-25, and 26-27, 25-26, currently Q1, rates by grade level, which was requested. And you might find there are bar charts just for those who like a visual reference, but the very last page, page 5, has a table on it which has your year-by-year grade level comparison, so you can see the progression. The good news is that in all but our adult special education population that stays with us until their 22nd birthday, all have significantly decreased over the past 3 years. So you'll see a steady progression in improvement with chronic absenteeism by grade level across the board. Even when you look at the Q1, and this is actually current as of last night, so it's Q1 plus 2 weeks of Q2 as well. I want to give you the most current data that we had. So we put the finishing touches on this with data as recently as yesterday included. And so you'll see that just summarily our attendance rate, our daily attendance rate has continued to increase. So in 22-23 it was 91.5, 23-24 it's 92.2, from last year. 24-25, it's 92.6. So it continues to increase year over year. And the chronic absenteeism rate over the past 3 years, so this is the end of year rate. So I went all the way back to 2022 for that one, because obviously we don't have an end of year rate right now. But we have gone from the end of 2023 at 28.4 to the end of last year down to 21.4. So we've seen a 7% reduction in chronic absenteeism over 2 years' time. And so we've continued to see that progression. Now, there was particular interest in some of the early childhood, which you'll see that kindergarten and pre-K group encompasses early childhood. That's what the Department of Education will report in that group. And remember, the difference between the early childhood group and grades 1 to 12 is whether it's compulsory or not. So there is a distinction in our reporting system because that is what the Department of Education requires in terms of student attendance. But even still, you'll see that in the early childhood, they are making progress as well at reducing the amount of chronic absenteeism. So I have Ms. Brown-LeGrand with me tonight. She actually oversees the attendance office. So I've got your data side of it. I oversee the data office, and so folks in the data office help our attendance office track their numbers, but they have tracking systems as well. And so in terms of talking about some of the strategies that the attendance department is doing, it's actually one of our strategic goals in our plan. You'll hear an update about that in the general meeting this evening. But it is a specific goal to work on chronic absenteeism as a push for our strategic plan. And Ms. Brown-LeGrand is in a pilot year with that particular goal right now. So if you have some updates and some background information on what the attendance office is doing to support schools with this work. Absolutely.
We go there. I think, ultimately, students who cannot read to third grade level upon leaving the third grade have a much more difficult time in school. And I'm looking at the chronic rate that you supplied for 24-25. And first grade has a chronic absentee rate of 18.5%, and it's gone down from 20.7. And of course, this year we've got a quarter measured of it, and it's at 12%. But what are we doing to support those students if they are chronically absent? Because ultimately it's an 18.5% chronic absenteeism. However, it doesn't mean that the student is missing exactly 18 days. They could be missing 41 days. But it still qualifies as just being chronically absent. So how do we support that student, moving forward so that we can get them reading and doing the math up to grade level so we can progress their education to the best of our ability.
We have a fairly robust attendance intervention plan, which is actually posted online if you ever wanted to peruse it. But it lists actually a kind of a pathway for all of the schools to be able to support all of our students that are absent, mainly focusing on those unexcused absences, because typically students that have excused absences might have another reason. They go a different path in terms of support, perhaps tutoring or our Saturday tutoring center, kind of depending on what might be happening with them. For our unexcused students, there's very clear checkpoints and a menu of kind of supports that they can access. So, simple examples are the expectation that, by attendance day 3 of unexcused absences, they're actually receiving a letter and communication from the schools to try to connect about kind of what's happening. By day 5, the expectation is there's a home visit from someone from the school or the attendance department to go out to the house, kind of lay eyes on the student, make sure that, our students are safe and well taken care of, as well as to try to communicate the importance of the attendance piece and being in school. We know that our kiddos that miss a lot of school earlier in their educational careers are our kiddos that also are at risk of dropping out, as you would expect, just because the volume alone of the amount of curriculum that they miss. So that has been kind of a real point, at least I know for a number of years, certainly for us for the last couple of years, of really trying to get in there and support those students.
And this is like per quarter, correct? This is not, if I have the third absent and I'm in May, that's not for me to have a letter to my home.
I mean, the concern would be more concerning in October. But let's say that you saw a pattern all of a sudden, or the student just disappeared for 3 days straight with no communication. It actually might be that they're reaching out because they would be concerned not hearing anything from a student potentially. So you have the attendance piece. You also have the student well-being piece, which is the other concern. Our attendance department meets regularly. For some schools, it's more frequent than others. It's generally monthly with every school. For some, it's every couple of weeks because of the way that they either stagger their attendance intervention teams or the need level, to be honest with you, size of the building as well. That's difficult to kind of get through all those students potentially in one meeting. And so we also have an adherence document that looks at the schools and kind of their consistency with adhering to all of our process so that we can support the buildings if they're struggling, let's say, not necessarily, easy to do home visits. Do they need the support from the attendance department to kind of do that? Or do they need some training potentially in terms of the consistency of the understanding of the administrators and support staff in the attendance process? And what our tiered interventions are for our kiddos? What's available as an option in terms of, so that's the work this year, is looking at, we have a pretty robust plan, but we have a mental health department in the last few years kind of pulling the SEL components and really looking to integrate families more into the attendance process. Families come in for attendance meetings, but we need to be a little bit more proactive. Oftentimes, by the time the attendance department is getting involved, they have already missed a number of days. So we're trying to kind of, support the buildings a little bit more robustly so that they have the ability to try to head some of it off. The other thing that we started last year, so just before I came on board, you guys voted in a position for FRC for the social worker. So she targets kind of that just before school age pre-K population. So we realized about halfway through last year that our pre-K students were non-attending. They're oftentimes our students that also have some needs. And so she has been working, Darcy has been working, collaboratively with the attendance department to reach out to the schools, make sure that we're kind of connecting with our attendance process, more robustly, as well as the families, so that they understand the importance of preschool, they understand what they're getting from it, to try to do a little bit more reach out so that the parents are coming and able to bring their kiddos to school and utilize the supports that are available.
Let me ask about the
Sure.
pre-K.
Yeah.
Is it all half-day, or do we
No,
have
it's a
some
mix.
full-
It's a mix.
Okay, and as far as the full day goes, is the absenteeism rate the same as it is on the half-day, or?
It's mostly half-day, so I would have to pull that. There's only a couple of full-day classrooms that are non-specialized, so I would have to pull that. I don't want to misspeak off the top of my head.
So that might be an
Yeah.
issue where parents.
Yep. I mean, we
based on their
definitely know that it
schedule.
is much harder for parents, and we tend to have kind of more Issues in terms of people sticking with the afternoon pre-K slots are the hardest for parents to navigate. It's easier to come in, drop your kiddo off, kind of pick them up at 11 o'clock than it is maybe to come in at 10:30 or 11 o'clock and then pick them up at 1:30, 2 o'clock, you know? And I would say that that's probably consistent in a lot of districts. So, you know, ideally we would be looking at, you know, in a perfect world with more financial resources, more full-day programming, which would be ideal to support kiddos across the board. I would guess, to be honest with you, that our afternoon pre-Ks probably have the worst attendance. I don't want to, you know, misspeak, but I would suspect that's probably if we were to pull the data, that's the biggest area of need.
Questions by our members? Ms. Doherty?
Yes. I think it's very important to start early, and
Yeah.
because you want to instill the importance in those families and the children, how that going to school is an important thing. They need to show up. My question is really around what I see as a huge increase starting in 9th grade. And I know that at a certain point, we can't compel them. Like if you've got a 2nd grader and you're not bringing them to school, the parent can be held accountable with the courts. I mean, I know it's a big move to do, but we always have that leverage if we need it. We don't have that leverage as they get older, and I know that might be a factor why we're seeing those numbers jump. You look at 9, 10, 11, even the 12th grade, 31.5% chronic absenteeism. But those kids are on track to not graduate. So are we doing anything different with that age group, the older kids?
Jump in if there's anything, yeah. So I think that's one of the big focuses of the committee that we also have too, because we're losing a lot of kiddos that are almost at the finish line, right? And so that's a piece of it. And sometimes there's other reasons. It's not as simple as I don't want to come. They have some life circumstances that are contributing to it. We have a number of alternative pathways for our kiddos, which is the one thing that has expanded in the last few years as well. So we want to make sure that we're trying to reach out to our kiddos before they get to that point. So Lauren Campion's department has worked really well with the student support at the high school to try to catch those kids before they're kind of, I'm done, I need to do something else, and kind of, you know, look at ways to support them so that they remain kind of enrolled and attending in the high school. And part of that has also been collaboration with the mental health department, centrally with the high school, to figure out ways to support our kiddos that, you know, oftentimes they were coming to central office and getting on our radar when they're already down that line in terms of already chronically absent, already on the verge of maybe looking to do something else or not coming to school for long periods of time. And so that has been really the focus of our work over the last year, is trying to get ahead of that, knowing the kids who they are earlier, and not waiting until, you know, the high school feels like they've maybe have exhausted all of their options before they're kind of coming to the alternative pathways, and people that have some other great ways of supporting the kiddos. I know the high school has put a big focus on this. I don't want to misspeak. I'm sure there's things that you want to add, but. Oh.
There we go. So what I'll point out is the data that's in front of you. If you look, for example, at the 24-25 chronic absenteeism rate for 9th grade, and just it was 32.5%. And you look at the difference between 9th and 10th grade, 35.6%. That's only 3.1% difference. Look at the fall now already, where we're at, and the significantly lower number for 9th grade, especially between 9th and 10th grade. So there has been a tremendous amount of outreach from the Freshman Academy already. I think one of the things that we talked about last year was the impact of not having free busing to start last school year, and the fact that that was instituted in December of last year, but is now continuing. I think that certainly helps. One of the biggest jumps, though, from 8 to 9 is that the bus is not a yellow school bus that comes at a pre-assigned stop, and you get a Lowell Public Schools bus pass to get on there and go. You have to navigate the city busing system, and it can be a big leap for some 14-year-olds who are doing that for the first time. But there is progress happening, significant progress in the Freshman Academy in Q1 this year. And so I'm pleased to see that. The numbers aren't where we want them to be. I continue to become more concerned as students get to an age where they're able to work. So once they hit 16, that happens in their sophomore year, and they can work more hours that are potentially impact their learning day. And that becomes, potentially a factor. We talked about, I've met with the folks at the high school, Mr. Fiato, as recently as today to talk about our dropout rate and, what we're looking at for Q1. And we've seen a little bit of a spike. We have 18 more students. It's in your KPI report for tonight, but there are 18 more students over Q1 this year that dropped out over last year. And so some of the concerns that we have around that are kids needing to work due to the economy and due to the impact of things like immigration crackdowns affecting primary earners in the households that may not be present any longer, and some of that role defaulting to our older teenagers. And so some of what is happening on a national landscape is actually having a pretty real impact on some of our students here. Despite that, they're making progress, and our goal is to make sure that that progress sustains throughout the year, that is not an initial great burst in the first quarter of the year, and then as the weather gets yucky and it gets harder to navigate, people don't come to school. I will say that weather is a tremendous factor in our daily attendance. If we have a wet, windy, rainy day, our absences increase by 200 to 300 students for the day. You would be surprised, but when we compare a weather calendar to our daily absent rate, and you look at if you have an unexplained high rate of absence on any one given day, take out the weather app and go back to that date, I'm going to say that almost 100% of the time you're going to find really bad weather. And so that also speaks to how many of our kids get to school by foot or by bicycle or are self-transporting in a way that's going to expose them to the elements. And it goes back to all of the other things that our schools do with Katie's Closet, things that you have chosen to fund to make sure kids have outerwear garments, that it is so comprehensive. There are so many small things that we might not consider as impactful. Who thought of the weather, right? It's very, very true. There's a high correlation between the weather and kids coming to school. And so it really takes a total systems approach to be able to move these numbers and get them to a place where we feel good about who's in school every day, what they're getting in school every day. And Mr. Bahu, you've talked a lot about what happens academically to kids who are behind in school. You made a reference to the first grade. So one new intervention this year is the Ignite tutoring program that we were selected by the Department of Education to receive. Nearly $1.5 million worth of funded tutoring seats primarily for first grade, but also for kids in other grade levels in elementary school. If all of our first graders' needs are met and we have extra seats, we can go up to other kids in other grade levels who might be behind in literacy and give them that high dosage tutoring in a virtual format that is one-on-one. So we have a lot of tutoring programs in our district. It's allowed us to take our in-person tutors and deploy them a little bit differently too, to support some of those other grade levels and to do that really small group work. You'll see a lot of small group reading intervention work at the younger grades. You'll see a lot of small group math intervention work at the younger grades, 2 or 3 students coming at a designated time every single day to get a very specific type of intervention based on where they've been assessed in their reading. So whether it's DIBELS or whether it's ERLA or whether it's iReady, there's a myriad number of tests that we use to get a student's sort of true reading level, and they're a little bit test dependent. And kids who fall in certain ranges go into these high-dose tutoring programs, whether they're in the virtual one-on-one program or whether they're with a live person in a very small group in our schools. And that is meant to try and catch them up, certainly on the days that they are present.
and the virtual one-on-one program began this year. Is that correct?
That is new this year, correct. We had a little pilot last year with a couple of schools, 2 schools, McAuliffe and Lincoln. And then when the Department of Ed offered these seats, we had seen some good efficacy data nationally from this particular vendor. It has one of the highest efficacy rates of any of the sponsored intervention programs that we've seen. And the pilot went really well in both of those schools. It was only from March to the end of the year. It was short term, but the implementation of it we knew would be doable in our schools. And so that really helped inform that this was the right way to go. So we have another round of assessment coming up for iReady and Dibbles in December. So we're just a couple of weeks out from getting fresh data. So when we come together for our Q2 KPI report, we're going to have all sorts of new iReady data, all sorts of new Dibbles data, and that will really tell us, are we on track? Are we above where we were at this point last year? Because all of the testing windows line up this year, and it's going to help us do more predictive work and then get kids into more streamlined interventions. I will say that our teachers, too, are using a number of different weekly intervention reports and assessments, and kids are literally moving through different intervention programs or going back in week to week. The regrouping for interventions used to be much longer term. We used to go maybe 12 weeks, and a kid would go into an intervention group, and they'd go into an intervention group for a trimester, and then we'd assess. And then, we got a little better at that, and they'd go into an intervention group for 6 to 8 weeks and get a series of things, and we'd assess. Now they might go into something for a week or 2 weeks. They get assessed at the end of the week. If they've met that skill and they're ready to move on, boom, you're going to go to the next group. And so it's getting more and more granular, more and more finite as we get better tools. Some of the curriculum that you have helped us purchase and that some of the grants have helped us purchase are allowing us to do more and get better at being really targeted with how we help kids catch up when they're not at grade level.
And as far as the tutoring goes, the virtual tutoring, is that generally a set time? Is it for 30 minutes? Is it for 45 minutes? Is it for 2 hours? How does that work?
The one-on-one tutoring is 15 minutes a day. It is a set time every day. The kids, we have a couple of different models of how it works best in any given school. And sometimes, in one classroom versus another classroom, it looks a little different. So students, there are plenty of schools where students sit right at their desks, they pop their headsets on, and they meet with their virtual person one-on-one and have a conversation right at their desk and work through their skills right at their desk. We have a couple of other schools that have a tutoring location in the building, and kids will go to their Ignite tutoring location at their given time with an adult that just supervises the area, and they go right back. It's very automatic. It's really impressive. The kids look forward to meeting with their adults. One of the things that we particularly liked about this vendor is that if we requested a certain if we said, oh, this young man would do really well with a male tutor, do you happen to have someone? They will work to provide us that match that we think would really best help that student engage. And our kids have, better skills than we do maybe at engaging with people online. They're great at it, and again, we've had a pilot and we've been implementing since the first week of October, but right now it's smooth. So we're looking forward to seeing the data and seeing what the impact of that tutoring is over the major testing intervals that we have.
Thank you. Ms. Doherty?
Just a quick follow-up on that. So what is the student missing in terms of time out of their day to do this?
So every school has an intervention block, and so this is happening during their intervention block. So while this is happening, the regular classroom teacher is also doing intervention, and it might be with some students that are at grade level or beyond grade level, and they're able to now do some accelerated work with those students while this group is on Ignite tutoring and a few other students are off with one of our regular tutors getting a different, maybe a fluency intervention. And so it's allowed us to make some space too to support all learners in differentiated ways.
I am so thrilled to hear that, because as you might recall, we had and maybe it was 2 years ago, that we were identifying some of those interventions were happening during specials at some schools. And I think the committee made a policy, we didn't want to be taking children away from art or music. That feels kind of like a punishment as opposed to that kind of concentrated, targeted support. So I'm really happy to hear that answer. Thank you.
As the former principal of the Arts Magnet School, we think the same on that.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Lay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back again to the definition of chronic absenteeism. So if you mentioned about students traveling on buses, so if the bus is late, are they marked as absentee or late or?
Nope, if a bus is late, if a bus showed up to school late due to, an accident in the city or having to drive around some traffic, no, the students would be excused into the building. Usually, as it happened to me, I was one of the later schools, so every once in a while, traffic would get backed up over a bridge or something, and students are welcomed in, and they are not punished with a tardy mark on their.
So if they come in late and they miss the first period, are they marked as late for the day and not absentee?
Yeah, no. So if a student just comes late and they come in before a certain time, and I can't give you one universal time because we have multiple start and end times to the school day, but if they come beyond the midday mark, they actually are absent. So they can be like tardy absent if they are so late that they've missed more than half of the day. But if they are late and they are in school before that time, then they are just marked tardy. The absence will get removed and replaced with the tardy.
And we don't really keep track of chronic late, right? Like if someone always late, we don't really keep.
So
that.
yes, we do collect that data. It is recorded in every student who signs in late. It's in their Aspen. It's part of their record. I would say that our middle schools have pretty robust tardy tracking systems and some consequences if it happens too often, especially as they get a little bit older and get to become a little more responsible for whether they are on time or not, especially if it's something that's within their control. Certainly, schools are expected to be understanding if there's a circumstance beyond a child's control. We do have a significant tardy issue at the high school, and that continues to be a challenge for us to mitigate. It's just being able to get kids into the building on time every single day. Some changes in the schedule are proposed to try and to mitigate that. So I would say that in grades 1 to 8, in the elementary grades, a tardy is, it's generally out of their locus of control. They're dependent on an adult, a bus, something to get them to school. But in the upper middle school grades in particular, there are some expectations for students, and if they're chronically tardy, they'll have some consequences to face for that.
Just one more question on the. Thank you. Do we keep track of grade, how they perform versus the number of late or number of absent? Do we have a good record showing that the relationship between good grade versus good attendance or bad grade versus bad attendance? Do we have that record?
So you're nodding.
Do we have that data,
Yeah.
actually?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it is a data point that's always looked at. So we have the opportunity to have Open Architects, which is one of the software programs that kind of pull all that information together for us. So we have the ability to kind of look at one student, identify what their tardies are, what their absences are, what their grades are, what their conduct are, and kind of look at that all together. And then you can pull the data kind of any which way. You can pull it by conduct on a student or in a grade level or in a school. You can pull it by, and so all of those kind of really, those are the real big 3 data points. Your kind of how you're doing academically, your attendance. Attendance, part of that is looking at latenesses for teams when they're looking at student needs, and kind of the conduct piece. For school-based meetings, for larger district meetings, let's say the attendance team, when they're kind of coming in and working on a student, they're really looking at all of those pieces because they are very interconnected. So oftentimes students that have conduct and attendance issues, don't do well academically, right? Students that don't do well well academically also sometimes have conduct and attendance issues. So they are very, very closely tied together. So those are the big three. Whenever we're doing any kind of problem solving with students, whether it's TAT teams at a building and looking at maybe providing some interventions at the building level, looking at something more district based in terms of something larger. The other thing about chronic absence is once you're chronically absent, you can't be unchronically absent. So let's say the student has missed 20 days in the first semester and then makes every day for the rest of the year, they're still coded chronically absent, which I know, sometimes parents I know struggle with that a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I just want to reel it back just a little bit to first grade students. Let's say a first grade or a second grade student misses 3 weeks in success of school.
Yep.
And, you know, some of it is illness and some of it is their parents' responsibility, and ultimately some of it is, I just don't want to go to school. And when they miss school and they come back, how do we ramp that student back up? Because, you know, we can do 15 minutes of tutoring, or we can go ahead and have an intervention plan, but I think it's a little bit more, that student might be a little bit more behind. And, you know, of course, you want them in that exact same classroom, so, but the other students may not be caught up. So please, if you could share that.
Sure thing. So, you know, our teachers do yeoman's work. They are very used to differentiating. It is a daily expectation that they're differentiating, and, you know, I would say that our teachers are expert at it. So when a student comes in, you know, often if they're absent, you know, all of their absent work is saved for them. We have so many digital communication tools now that oftentimes a student and a family has already been provided some of the assignments and things that they have missed. And sometimes students will come in with some of that already done, and the teacher will get a good sense of what they were able to master with some support at home and what they weren't able to do depending on the reason why they were absent. One of the other things, though, that we have run consistently are the February and April vacation academies, where we've had targeted high-dose tutoring for specific students who are behind. And so we have some of those catch-up programs built into our February and April school vacation weeks, which by that point in the year is when you typically start to see if someone has sort of accumulated a number of absences, a young student has a number of absences by then, they can go into a February vacation program. They can get 4 days of intensive, these are very small classrooms with our teachers, so with an expert teacher, very small classroom, working on those foundational math and literacy skills for generally either a 4-hour day or sometimes even a full day, depending on how much funding is available for those particular programs. So those have been used as a big dose to catch up if you have a child that has sort of accumulated over time some absences that have led to some lagging performance. And Mr. Lay is absolutely right that there's a correlation between academic performance and the level of chronic absenteeism. And not to get too far ahead again, but in the Q1 KPI report that we'll talk about tonight, there is a significant reduction in the course failure rates from Q1. And that aligns with the improvement in attendance and the decline in chronic absenteeism. So all of that tracks. There's also a reduction in behaviors and a significant reduction in suspensions in Q1. So all of this does everything, as I said, it's very systems oriented, and everything affects everything else. So we look at all of those indicators discretely, one by one, but then you put them all together and you look at the gestalt, you look at the whole picture of it. And that's really, you know, we know these are the things that we need to do to continue to make progress with improving literacy rates, improving math rates, and getting more kids to grade level before they move on to the next grade level.
And I asked about summer school for K through 3, or for 1 through 3, realistically. And I know it's very difficult for, you know, to mandate summer school for first grade or a second grade student, because ultimately, you know, summer is a big deal for them. Is there a way that and I know summer school is optional for first grade through third grade, first grade through fourth grade. So is there a way that we can sort of, it being optional, and I know it's first come, first serve, is there a way that we could go ahead and have the students who are sort of, have more fallen behind and didn't attend school as much, to sort of go to the head of that opportunity so that they can be in school. And of course, summer school is fun. We have to rebrand it as sort of fun, right? And it's not just all academics all the time. But is there some way that we could go ahead and create that sense of urgency for that type of student?
Certainly, I will say that we had plenty of seats in our summer programs this summer. They were quite under-enrolled. And so it becomes a challenge to have, this is where some of that pre-K factors in. When you don't have a full day, when it's a 4-hour program or whatnot, it becomes difficult for working parents especially to access those summer programs because they need a full day's worth of childcare for their child, and they don't have somebody to come in at noontime to pick them up from an 8 to noon. So we do our best. So absolutely, students with high needs are prioritized. If they have an IEP, summer school would, and the IEP team determines that they need, that they're at risk for regression, they would go into the special education summer school program. So we know a number of our students with disabilities are not meeting, they have our largest achievement gaps overall and are not meeting the proficiency standards at the same rate as a non-disabled peer. And so there's a process by which they would go into the special education summer program, which is very structured. But for other students that are not students with disabilities who access our general education summer program, we need more enrollment in there. We know that the funding has not been the same, so transportation has been a huge issue because we had not been able to provide transportation, and we are not yet, no longer able to provide a full day of summer programming. We also know that the temperatures in our schools in the summer can become absolutely unbearable in some cases, and it does become challenging to compel young people to be in school when it is stifling. So there's some real challenges with counting on summer school to fill that gap. We still offer it, we still recruit, we still prioritize those families, but we don't have a policy or anything that would compel them to be in that summer program in the younger grades.
Ms. Doherty?
Thank you. I just want to follow up for some clarification because I thought we were making it mandatory for students who were at risk of not passing due to maybe chronic absenteeism, I would think would be one key factor. But if you, let's say you're a 4th grader and you've missed a lot of school, and we have all, I think, heard that saying out in the community, well, nobody doesn't pass to the next grade. And although I recognize it's a draconian measure to make a child stay back, I do also want to make sure that we are rigorous in our expectations for passing on to the next grade. And certainly at the end, the high school diploma, it has to mean something. So am I mistaken that we weren't ever using summer school, like you're at risk of not passing whatever grade, you need to successfully attend summer school to make up for. Is that something that happened in the past that's not happening forward? And then the second piece of this is I have also heard about real under-enrollment to the point of being very expensive, the summer school program. And I think maybe we should ask for a report on how was it last year or in the last 2 years, and what are the plans to make it, like if you've got a classroom, you've got a teacher that you're paying and 3 kids, I mean, that's a very expensive program if we're not getting the students there. So I think there's 2 pieces to that. And refresh my memory if I'm incorrect about summer school as a path to moving to the next grade, advancing to the next grade.
Thank you. So a student is considered provisionally retained if they have 15 to 25 absences. They are considered retained if they have over 25 absences. And in that provisionally retained status is when summer school would be put on the table as an option.
Option, but not a requirement?
If they don't go, then they would be retained. So they would need to successfully complete summer school with no more than 2 absences. That's our policy. It's right in the
So even with that policy, we're still seeing under enrollment in summer school.
So we see more compulsory enrollment with grades 5 through 12 that are affected directly by that policy.
And then grades 1 through 4?
It is not the same. Yep,
So
the
share-
policy
please
is
share
not
what
the
that
same.
is.
So that's a policy question for the committee to consider if you wanted to make a change and put some more sort of teeth to younger students having a similar
Being able to
expectation.
advance to the next grade.
Correct.
And so I'll go to you just one. What are your thoughts about really looking at changes to summer school? So it is a program, because I think it's definitely needed and valuable if it's run right, but we have to have the students there. Or we're throwing a lot of money out.
I think that given the number of attendees, and, you know, I would need to go back because I don't oversee summer school directly. We have a director of special programs, and that's under Dr. Foxroy's purview. And so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I go around to all the summer school sites, and I did see where we had better enrollment and small enrollment. And I do think that we need to consider some of those key factors, such as making the day a fuller day so that parents can rely on it for childcare, and considering the cost of transportation. If we look at the total number of seats that were occupied, that would be, you know, we would want to look at the number of seats that were actually occupied, and determine whether we offer, you know, sort of fewer sites, collapsed sites, but trying to enroll those at higher numbers and provide a longer day and transportation. So we have some options to discuss and again, this isn't for me to speak authoritatively on, because it's not my.
But I think you're making me think of a couple of things. We do have the problem with the temperature. It gets hot in the summer, and that's one of the reasons we did it early in the day. But if we look at the numbers, maybe we don't offer it at every school. We select schools that are in strategic locations to cover the city, but maybe have air conditioning, have better facilities to accommodate, and then that would then give us a bigger bang for our buck in terms of the number of students. So I personally, and I'm not going to be here, but I just recommended to my colleague, it would be a good motion to really, let's study the summer school issue before we get too far down the line for this year, because we want to be able to plan an effective program for next summer.
Sure, and to piggyback off that thought, because it's a great thought, currently, summer schools, are they at every school within our district, or is it more regionalized?
So, with my historical knowledge of 15 years here in the district, I can remember the times where we were regionalized. So we had a location, so we had less funding. We had a location in sort of each quadrant of the city, and it was done a little bit more like Mr. already mentioned. When ESSER came and we had a lot of funding, we were able to operate programs at every site, and we had an appetite. There was an appetite for them. They were better attended. I think kids had missed school. Parents were eager to get them back in their buildings, and we've seen a declining enrollment over the last couple of years in those summer programs, and a real thinning out of the student population, and therefore, you know, obviously we haven't had the same amount of funding either. We've been trimming and trimming and trimming. And so when you trim and you take away some of the transportation and things that we provided before, it becomes an access issue, and it impacts who can actually come. So the question is, do you really narrow down and serve strategically, and, you know, go back to the model where we had the quadrants of the city, and you know, a location? We did find that kids were more likely to want to go to their home school initially, right? When we had those well-funded programs and transportation, families were much happier to send their kids to their local school, their regular school. But it may be time for us to look at some reevaluate exactly, and with Dr. Fox and her team that oversees special programs, they have all of the data, and they would be best positioned to do that work, which may be in like a curriculum subcommittee or whatever that Dr. Fox oversees.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, I was reiterating the transportation thing, I think is the biggest hurdle to summer school. So mandating something that we can't provide access to becomes a challenge. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Transportation, a longer day, and I could talk about this for the next 3 hours if we could, but however, we do have a school committee meeting, it's starting in about 3 minutes. So if Mr. Lay would like to have the last question?
I don't have a question. I just,
okay,
I just
make a
have,
comment,
I look at this bar graph right in front of us, and the data jumped at me, and I feel like I compelled to talk now before I forget, is that, you know, if we look at how the state rank our schools, they probably look at the high school, how successful we are at the high school level. And looking at the chronic absenteeism from grade 9 to 12, that jumped. You look at from grade 1 to 8, they're all very similar. And all of a sudden, grade 9 to 12, it jumped. So if we could maintain those absenteeism in the high school to be the same as the lower grades, I think if chronic absenteeism and has a relationship with the grade, with performance, I think if we could do that, then it will really increase the performance at the high school. So I don't know if all of a sudden 9th grade, 10th grade, 11, 12 students are independent, they go to school by themselves, they could leave whenever they want, they go outside. You hear the residents complaining about schools hanging out during the school hours on Merrimack. Of course, we cannot assume that every young person out there is a high school student, but if we could somehow find a way to keep them in school, I think that probably a good indication that we could help our ranking. That's how I feel.
Great thinking, Mr. Lay.
Thank you.
We'll have to continue that another day. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Doherty, seconded by Mr. Lay. All approve.